Good morning and welcome back to the second hour of LoveBabz Love Talk. You were just listening to The Water is Wide, the Wasuli boat song. And this is music created by is it Wu Fei?
Yes, perfect.
Wu Fei and Abigail Washburn. They will be in New Haven at the Schwartzman Center March 1st. They are in an incredible duel of Appalachian folk songs and Chinese folk songs.
Yes, I'm really excited.
So
Actually, March 2nd. Is it March
oh,
2nd?
March 2nd?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, March
Saturday.
2nd. Saturday. Oh, so Wufa, tell me about this collaboration because you play a particular instrument and she plays a particular Angela plays a particular instrument. How did this collab happen?
Abby and I have been friends since 15, 16 years ago, all the way back to when she was playing, because she went to school to study Chinese language, Chinese culture, Eastern Asian studies at school. And I came to the States as a young musician. So our path as a string player, our paths just naturally crossed, introduced by a mutual friend who's also a musician, string players. So that's back in Colorado when we were introduced and we met each other, and Abby was on tour. So our mutual interest of music and language and cultures brought us together. And over the years, we kept our friendship going, our collaborations, whenever we crossed our path, because we're both busy with our own projects. So it wasn't so easy to always, China and America both are very big countries to cross our, just happen to be in one city. So the strong will really kept us together. Yes. And our instruments, my instrument is called the guzheng. It's an ancient Chinese zither. Literally, gu means ancient. Zheng means zither. Has at least 2,500 years of history. It's been around. It's a pretty big string instrument. It looks like a flat harp with 21 strings. Sits on the kind of on, could be on your lap or could be on stands. And the zither is all over Asia. There's the Korean version, the gayagum, the Japanese koto, the Vietnamese danchuan, all over Asia. So we're all cousin instruments. And Abby plays the banjo, which is also has been brought from Africa over the slave trade time that kept the Africans on the boat very strong, playing their instrument. So our instruments just have been traveling all over human history, and to this day, America is a new melting pot of continent. If we think about human history, how long? So we all have gotten here, and there are just two instruments. Two humans want to share songs and stories. Really as simple as that. So that's our kind of a long story, make it short.
I love it. So, did you start out playing as a child this instrument, or did you play another instrument and then you picked this up, like you decided to capture this cultural, historical piece of instrument?
Oh wow, my story wasn't my parents decide my path as a musician when I was maybe my parents also, their musician professor friends who were at the conservatory. I was chosen basically to play music as when I was 2 years old. They had their way of scouting music talent. I don't know what happened. So I was put on the path pretty early on, not by my choice. I had a pretty tough time as a child, being forced to practice 2 hours a day minimum since I was 5 for like the next 10 years. Absolutely no excuse. So it was I had a very rigorous training as a child in the conservatory system. I did also play the piano because I wanted to become a composer, and the piano was the instrument that you really, it's like the instrument you need to learn to cover entire uh, music history or understanding music theory from the West, from the East. It was just like, so yeah, and I've been singing in choirs, from smaller choir to big choir, throughout my childhood as well.
Hmm. And so how old were you when you came to the zither?
I started my first lesson when I was 5.
Oh, okay, so you started with the because I met another Chinese musician, and they started with like the violin or something like that. And
Mm.
then as they had grown up and got older, they discovered a particular instrument that was as old as this, and they wanted to bring it to the world, to not lose it in the culture because nobody is really playing this anymore. And so
Right.
so I was wondering if you had a similar story because this is a very old instrument. And are people like, is that something that you see? I imagine you see it all the time at home. I mean, in China, but I was just curious as if it was something you started with or you picked it up later.
It's actually, I have to mention, my upbringing, my family has a lot to do with choosing this instrument. My father is a very talented musician, and he plays the traditional 3-string fretless Chinese lute. That's also, I would say, it's been in China for about 2,000 years,
Hmm.
from the Silk Road trade era from 2,000 years ago, but it has stayed in China, played throughout. So my dad he's a very virtuosic player on the sanxiao, which literally means 3-string. It originally came from Middle East, from Iran, I believe. And then, but so also my neighborhood where I was born and raised was the west side of the Forbidden City, which had a lot historically for many centuries have had Chinese poets, writers, Chinese opera performers, composers, the old like royal relatives. They were all, because it was the district where a lot of like big picking opera. When people had a free time, they were just playing picking opera, just practice as a band in their courtyard houses. So I was raised in that environment.
Hmm.
So somehow, by luck, pure luck, that the passion from my family about traditional art, calligraphy, and the old parks. You go to the old parks to sing opera with your buddies. It was always around. Since I was born, I think I was born into that culture. I never thought of, oh, as a baby, 3 year old, I'm gonna, carry on the heritage. Like I couldn't have thought. But my parents really, they always loved folk music, Chinese operas, and and at the time, piano was much more expensive to buy, and China had just stopped from decades of political chaos from the Cultural Revolution. So there was no manufacturers making traditional Chinese instruments, and it stopped because during the Cultural Revolution, traditional Chinese music was considered bad, like the old evil. So
Wow.
yeah, so a lot of the musician even had to hide or throw away their instruments to avoid trouble. If you get busted, who knows? You can get very beaten up or something like that. So it took my parents a while to even find an instrument for me to learn. At the beginning, my dad wanted me to learn his sanxiao, his string lute. I was like, nah, you don't want to play what your dad plays. and uh, and then my mom said, okay, now we really have to find something. So with some kind of a friend network, and she had access to the old Beijing music instrument manufacturer in the warehouse. There was some old instruments laying around, and the first thing my mom saw, oh, this giant, big zither-looking harp instrument. No one wanted. Well, so my mom had to like borrow a like a scooter to because she only had a bicycle. There's no way you could put like a kayak on a bicycle at that time. So she really like bought a scooter. I mean, borrowed a scooter and the 3-wheel scooter, and then just biked all the way home. So that's how it just all by kind of by coincidence, but they did ring much more to the traditional music since they were young.
And so your relationship with Abigail, I imagine you hear something in the banjo that marries well with your instrument to make this new music.
Yes. First of all, they are both string instruments. Strings just they resonate no matter what kind of strings. To me, I don't see instruments as oh what matches or what don't. It's really the person.
Hmm.
And if you, I mean, because instruments, it's from the old time. When there was no instrument made, if people who live near the ocean, you just grab some fish strings and put over a big tree, gourd, and then that's kind of everywhere. That shape instruments in every culture by the ocean, especially. So it's a. So I don't see what key or scale they sort of match. It's like when the humans are open, when they just want to play something, there's no obstacle.
Hmm.
So and I'm very lucky for me that the guzheng, the zither, has such a big range. It covers 4 octaves from low D to high D all the way. So I see this instrument has a huge potential, like a piano is when I want to become a bass, I have the low D, very long bass tone, and I want to do the mandolin sound. I'm on the top, super high. I could do the mandolin sound, very tinkly, and then or I want to become a rhythmic guitar in the middle. So there's so many possibilities that the to just hear where the story goes. If Abby is playing something more melodic, I can be the rhythm to, I can be the ocean, I can be the wave, and she can be the boat. It's just like, so I don't think really much of a uh yeah, the instruments is I think how open, how yeah, how open the person can be. You can be a virtuosic pianist, but if you are not willing to open up, to have different perspective, to change the piano, maybe to turn it into a different instrument, then a piano will forever stay with those keys. But
So when you're composing, do you hear the instruments before you start to compose something? Like when you are composing some music, some new music, because this sounds like new music, right?
mm,
Do you hear where things ought to be linearly? Like, do you hear that? Like, do
yes.
you hear when the piano should come in? Do you hear when the banjo should come in? Do you hear when the zither should come in?
If I am in charge of like so from the composition background, when I'm in charge, I mean I'm coming up with all the notes for the players, is a different process. So with Abby, this is more of a collaborative. So I don't know much about the banjo repertoire before, at least, or the songs. So when she plays something, it instantly takes me to somewhere that's new, that I almost reinvent what the guzheng can sound. Versus if but the more familiar I am with the instrument, the new instrument, then I have also more information. Then I will have more targeted sound, because it comes with knowledge of knowing an instrument, even if I don't play it. But for different, let's say if I write for a chamber orchestra, for a symphony, or for a particular instrument, if I'm commissioned to write for a xylophone or for a marimba, then I really my brain works like an architect, that I do have a imagination of a sound story, and when to introduce what, that is very particular in my head, because they gotta also build work as a house, as a sonic house, and that makes sense to the storytelling. Sometimes can be more spontaneous, but many of times is more of already in my head. So in that process, what we call it the inner image that because also from since I was a kid, being in orchestra, playing it, understanding, knowing the sounds and their strength, what's good to be played, to be written on a flute versus on a bassoon. It's very different. So you want to shine the instrument's strength versus writing something that's super difficult to play. So there's a different process. And then for improvisation, it's a whole nother process in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
But with Abby, this is much more of a hearing a culture, a different way of storytelling that's more spontaneous, more natural, coming out of, I'm just like start coherent the materials that's into my hearing. And so there are definitely structure. We have used more structured to tie things, because old folk songs are usually just kind of one phrase or no more than two phrases back and forth. So how do you weave the only one or two melodies into a more of a larger structure as a one piece? Then we did use some the compositional craft to transitions or vocals here, only vocals, and then or only instrumental, and then when to bring them back, or one person sings the other. So those are much more of the designer, the tailoring our material process. So it's a combination of those.
Mm-hmm. So every time you step on the stage, if people are not familiar, and I would imagine if you're here in the West, a lot of people are not familiar with your instrument. Do you educate? Do you explain? Do you tell the history and the story of this instrument so that people are like, oh, okay, now I understand what this is?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. Not only usually I would do a little intro of the brief history. Also each song, I will give a little bit also introduction, a background of what's coming, what region and how long, and possibly or how accurate this piece it is what you are hearing, because the notation system has been around, in Chinese notation system has been around also for more than 2,000 years. So it's going to be as pretty accurate to what you are hearing today, because the notation is around. But for folk songs, you might hear have a bit far from what's like from 300 years ago, because it's all oral passing, learning, or from what region it was about, and then yeah. So definitely yes.
So do you get the sense that young people, particularly young Chinese folks,
Mm.
are interested in hearing these folk songs and learning a part that could possibly be lost over time? I mean, do you find that there's some interest in preserving these folk songs?
Yes, I see it definitely. It's I can't say how the percentage of the population is such a large population. It may still be small, but yes, there definitely a much stronger desire to preserve and study these old traditional tunes. And uh, especially in the way that, because when I learned these songs, when I was a kid, I was a teenager, and not from a overproduction version of, because there's some of the songs are famous in China, but the way it has been, the songs have been presented almost in a super heavily production, it's like a big scale. I mean, somehow I think you can have a different perspective when you hear a song that's produced like that, that it may not touches your heart because it's just so overproduced and
Mm-hmm.
in a big giant disco way, to present a a sweet folk tune. It just somehow, people maybe just want to dance to it, but but if it's put in a different setting and it's really just like a cappella, just sing it, it can actually touch one's heart much more. Even the same song. So it has happened a lot. I see that. So I feel, to me, I would like to really to do this much more simpler way, the earthy way, because you even hear the melodies and the lyrics is really about people's life. It's just not on a big grand gala stage to have like a boombox sort of boom boom. I mean, you could do that, but I think maybe audience can be turned away if that doesn't move their heart.
I mean, you seem very young to be so connected to these folk songs that are 2,000 to 3,000 years old. I mean, even though you grew up hearing them in your life, was there a time when you weren't playing these songs? Was there some other music that you were playing and learned to play and kind of like to play beyond,
Oh,
in
absolutely.
addition to your folk music?
Oh, absolutely. It was I think the folk music on this that's we'll be playing at Yale, they were just sort of in the back of my mind as a like a upbringing sort of environment that I knew in the back in the heart. But the really when I went through the studies in the institutions in the China Conservatory of music, I had to learn a lot of let's say Western classical repertoire, much more of a contemporary Chinese repertoire. Uh, and on TV, there was a lot of, actually back then when I was a kid, it was quite open. I got to see a lot of music from, let's say, from India, Bollywood, Africa, Japan, the Philippines, Yugoslavia, Italy. So it was, or Brazil, and a lot of, so I really listened to a lot of those music as a child, and practice, let's say, the whole 9 yards, from Bach to Handel to Mendelssohn to Beethoven, all the way to even Stravinsky, to studying the score, to read and do form and analysis. Uh, and when I came to the States as a college kid, I really loved, I was just, my mind was also open up to so much that I never heard in China. Like in my early 20s, in the States, I immediately fell in love with jazz, with Indian raga. It was like, actually the States was such a melting pot of actually people from all over the world to come here to live here to make a life. So they brought all their home music too, and West African drum dance ensembles, and then electronic music, yeah, and Balinese gamelan, or rock, experimental rock, ex heavy metal, name it, you name it. I was having a ball.
It sounds like you were having a cultural overload with all this
I
music.
mean, I don't know. I'm like, because to me, I didn't really need to tightly to grasp on any Chinese, because that's where I come from. And then I just was so exposed to all these new cultural elements and different way of expressing yourself. Often from is the opposite from the Chinese tradition, which was from the old school traditional repertoire. You very proper, and you only stick with this structure and not that structure. And the States really changed my life in a really amazing way.
So what do you listen to now? Like when you're not listening to folk music, and like, what are you listening to Beyonce? Like, what are you doing? Who are you listening to?
Oh, wow. For the very current moment, I mean, I listen to all kinds of music there, because I just listen to things that are interesting and inspiring. But the most recent, I discovered a new K-pop group
Mm.
called XG. And they're like a group of young women who can rap, they rap in 3 languages. And
Wow.
yeah, English, Korean, Japanese. And then they can sing. So it's really, you thought, oh, BTS, Blackpink were so, gloriously sensational, successful. And then what's next? But boom, there comes another group. It's like, wow, and it's phenomenal. Anyways, so I just thought was really cool. And listening to things that are very authentic, like a really root music from different
Mhm.
culture, and hearing their language, because language, when you don't understand, is really actually a sonic experience, because the rhythm, how they, when, um, I mean, yeah, it's just like sounds and pitches and rhythm. So that's really what also like listen to, and yeah, so that's the very current moment. And of course, every now and then I want to listen to some of the compositions that I love, to, just because especially like orchestral music, like from Beethoven, I mean from Mendelssohn, especially Mendelssohn, um just to hear, because there's so much complexity. It's beautiful, but there's so much every time. It's like a novel. Every time you read it again, you hear something new. Like, oh, because you also want to craft, like, how did he do that? How did he put the oboe and then, clarinets? Like, wow, so interesting. So these kind of a moments, yes.
Oh, I love it. All right, so you and Abigail are performing on Saturday, the 2nd. What
Mm-hmm.
what what will we expect to what can I expect to hear? Like what are you doing? What's that set
Oh.
look like?
And wow, it's gonna be one whole set, and it's gonna be all over the map. I think for America is from the Appalachian, the sea coastline style, to the mountains, to like the Western cowboy time, to a group of all-girl band from Kentucky that went to Shanghai to tour in the 1930s. Also mixed with traditional Chinese folk songs that also all over the map, from the northeast that's border with Russia to all the way to Guangdong, that's border with Vietnam or Cambodia, from the birthplace of Confucius to Western China, the Uyghurs people's music that also has similar sentiment from the Texas cowboy. It's like so it's all over the map, and we sing in Chinese and English together. Sometimes separately, sometimes mix them together. So hearing the language kinds of mixing into one is one experience. And we'll do some opera from the Henan province about Mulan. It's one of the most famous, and then quite a few, yeah, tunes are, in China, Chinese tunes are known and loved by at least a point 1.4 billion people. So it will be a very fun experience.
Oh, I love this. So at each turn, are you telling the story about the song or the piece you're about to play? Like, as I feel like it's like a history lesson.
It will be like that. Yes, it will be like that. And we will sitting down or standing up, and there's also improvisation part. Yes, we will have a stories weaved within, in and out of the songs as well.
Now, is it just you two on stage, or do you have a accompaniment? You like to have
Just the two
folks,
of us.
just the two of you making all this music?
Yes.
Wow. And so have y'all, I mean, you've known each other for so long and you know each other's probably rhythms and stuff. Are you all touring together now? Like, is this part of a tour?
Well, this one we are performing, definitely. We don't perform a lot together, but
Okay.
we do every year. Yeah, we just did it last fall in the Midwest, and then this one, Yale, so far is this spring is the only concert we're playing, but we will have more coming up this fall that's already being discussed. So I would love to have yeah, your network and people from Yale, and I'm sure everyone's got friends from all over the country. Yeah, just stay tuned, and then we should be yeah, having some new concert scheduled soon.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I love the piece, "The Water is Wide." I thought that was a very beautiful piece and moving, and I'm glad that it's recorded so that people can like hear it when we're not seeing y'all on stage.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, yes, that's one song. That's the Wusuli boat song. Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
super super lovely tune, and yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you had time to come on this morning, Woo, and talk about this music and talk about this upcoming concert on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm going to try to make it because I'm intrigued by this music now and this instrument. Like now I want to see this instrument up close.
Yes, yes. If you can get really close, yeah, because we always know that the audience want to see how I pluck, how Abby plucks our finger work. It's yeah, so it's quite of a quite can be quite intense. Yeah.
Well, my producer, Harry Joseph, is going to play us out with the Roving Cowboy song. So I want to thank you for your time this morning and welcome when you come to New Haven. If you're not already here, welcome. And I hope you have a good time.
Thank you so much for having me. And Abby says hi, but yeah, somehow she couldn't get on. But we will be in New Haven in just a few days. We're going
Yes,
on Thursday. Yes.
yes, I look forward to seeing you. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Harry, for playing Roving Cowboy. And have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Babz. Thank you for having me.
Of
Have a
course, I
good
loved
day.
it.
Bye.